All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. If you like the videos, don't forget to like them, share them far and wide, and of course, the best place to follow us is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. All righty, I was giving it a little bit of time there. I wanted to make sure everybody was live and going. I don't want any more ether episodes. Ether episodes, for those of you who didn't watch the makeup show last night, is the name we are giving to the episode that I thought was marvelous too, and now is gone forever in the ether with ether, right? Gone forever. All right, so I was tempted to start with a video clip here, and we can get to that in a little bit because I do want to wait to see if we're going to have our buddy come on to help me explain. And I think the best way to explain this thing about why ethnicity matters, and I think the best way to do that is to tell some stories, right? Because we can get into the numbers all we want, and we are, but I think, again, like I said last week, sometimes we forget that numbers are people, and people have stories and they have experiences, and that's what makes them who they are. There's a whole school of thought that says that our personalities, we ourselves, are just a collection of, not even personalities, we're just a collection of memories, and our personality is the product of experience. Other people say our personality is innate. At least some part of it was given to us at birth, whether or not you believe in a creator, which I do. Maybe he gave us a piece of who we are and it develops from there. But who we are at our core, what makes up our stream of consciousness, is a collection of memories. And ethnicities, groups that clump together, have shared experiences. They have shared memories as a community. Benedict Anderson, Imagine Communities, is a great book. And even if you don't buy everything in it, I would highly, highly, highly suggest you read it. It may be one of our book club assignments for locals. I absolutely wanted it to be. When we were reading Myths of Empire, I was already thinking Benedict Anderson is in the queue. It's heavy reading a little bit. For book club, you would think it wouldn't work, but it would, because we would just it's not huge, and we would have to explain it along the way, but it's crazy. And the idea generally is, believe it or not, in academia, there's an argument about whether nations, right? Because what we're talking about with ethnicity is nationality. And there's this argument in academia about whether or not nations are real. Are they truly real? And Benedict Anderson, I think, and most people think, but I think, my time in academia, that he put this question to bed. That people who are saying they're not real, they're created, we created them. To them, he says, so what? So what? And by the way, those are mostly leftists. Leftists hate nationalism. They hate the concept of national origin, even though they use race and ethnicity to divide people to win elections. They hate that concept because the heir to their school of thought, who is a Marxist, is Thomas Narn. And what he said is leftism's greatest failures in the 20th century can all be explained by nationalism. You could see it all through the world wars, the period of the Great Wars. Why? Well, because contrary to what you hear in the media, contrary to what you hear from politicians, contrary to what you read in the stupid history books that probably were fed to you as kids in your classrooms, fascism is a leftist ideology. It is a socialist ideology. It's on the left with Democrats. Sorry, but it is. Hitler and the Nazis, they're on the left with Democrats. And Thomas Narn doesn't even argue that fact, so I don't know why they do. The only reason we separated Nazis as right-wing versus left-wing is because we had to paint a picture of Joe Stalin as the good guy. The country called him Uncle Joe. He was a mass freaking murderer. But we could not have him associated with other leftists. And by the way, who else was a leftist? Oh, that's right, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So with all of these people murdering millions of human souls all over the globe, but God forbid the American president, who wants to be the father of the nation and basically a dictator until he dies, king until he dies, which he almost was. He wants to be the father of a nation. God forbid we lump dear old dad in with Adolf Hitler. No, him and Uncle Joe, they're different. They're commies instead, whatever. They are on the left. And if ideology was stronger than nation, the concept of nation, then you would have seen a few things happen. You would have seen Stalin and the communists align with their socialist brethren against the capitalist powers, the bourgeoisie in the English and American empires. But they didn't. You would have seen, well, you did see, of course, collaborators everywhere in France and but there is really no connection between collaboration in France, for instance, and ideology. They were trying to survive. Some were shared ideologues, but like communists, but really many collaborators were just trying to survive. Even the Frenchman, the concept of I am proud to be a Frenchman, doomed the occupation of France for the Nazis. Stalin instead joined the evil capitalist powers and fought against the Nazis. The concept of I'm Russian was more powerful than I am a socialist, an avowed socialist. The concept of I'm a Britishman, even though there were a lot of leftists in Great Britain, was more powerful. The concept of I'm a Frenchman was more powerful than I'm a leftist. And Thomas Narn laments this in his works. And everybody knows Tom Narn. Well, not everybody, but in academia, I'm sorry. Tom Narn was the heir to Marx. Even though he's rather modern, he was still the heir to the Marxist school of intellectual thought. Ken Waltz, Man, State, and War, he recognized it. And Benedict Anderson said, so what? Even if they're imagined, they're still real. Everything's imagined. For all we know, the entire universe and everything that God created was a product of his imagination. His concepts of that go back a very long time. The theos and the logos comes from the Greek. Consciousness, I am, and the word that makes things come into existence. Which very good, sidebar. Knowing that, go back and reread the book of Genesis. Really kind of interesting. And the word was with him, and then God said, let there be light. I don't want to go on a religious tire. I'm just saying, like, that concept has been around a very long time. And by the way, the fact that people would even know that back then, because that's before, of course, the Greeks, is very impressive to me. I wonder where they heard it from. Anyway, we imagine these things. We dream them up. Even our own realities. I want to be this when I grow up. Dad, I want to be that when I grow up. Mom, we make our reality what it is. And there's no difference with the concept of nation. If you went to 23andMe or to Ancestry.com or wherever the hell you want to go, although I would never do it because I'm not going in your damn database, and you take a DNA test. I have an Italian friend, and of course he got mocked for this. This is the way it was back then. I'm going to tell you stories about how things were in my own ethnic community, or where I came from especially. But then even in the 80s and in the 90s, my own ethnic community that when we moved and migrated, I'm going to explain them. I'm going to tell stories to explain why ethnicity is important. Because you would say, so what, Rich? They're Norwegian. So what, Rich? They're Swedish. So what? They're Finnish. So what? They're German. So what? They're Italian. So what? They're Irish. Well, all of these ethnicities have experiences, and those experiences are still very much in the collective consciousness of their minds, and that determines how they vote, what they support, what they don't. It's what I mean, really, again, another one, second book recommendation. If you were in the book club, you really have to join the book club. This will make a lot more sense to you if you do. We just got done with Kevin Phillips. He does explain this a lot in detail, but there's so much more. And I think he's, again, just trying to say, this is how it is. He explains somewhat, like, this is why German Catholics trended conservative. This is why Norwegians are different than Swedish and Finns. Like, he explained that in some regard. There's the Civil War era and the Civil Rights era. And those two, the experiences of those groups in those eras really shaped it. But there are newer groups like my group, the Italians, for instance, of course, and Jews too in New York. But there are groups like Italians that are not as new to the new world as, or yeah, I mean, they're not as old to the new world, or were not. They were new arrivals to the new world in relative terms when you're looking at Irish, Scot Irish, even some Scandinavians, although there was certainly a lot more later, but Germans. I mean, there were Hessians long before there were large groups of Italians on, on the on the soil of the United States. Hessians are Germans, by the way. In any event, we create these things and they have these strong bonds that stay with us, whether we know it or realize it or not, whether we remember it or not. And the book, for people, I should just assume, I shouldn't assume people knew what I was talking about. Kevin Phillips has a couple books, number one, but you really should not read any of his other books unless you read The Emerging Republican Majority. Then you will have a much better grasp, much clearer grasp on the rest of his works. Right. But this is why the next book, by the way, I picked this on purpose, because we focus so much on race and not enough on ethnicity that serves the Democratic purpose. It doesn't serve the voter in understanding why groups do what they do. When they speak simply about race, then it's much easier for them to make the arguments to keep, for instance, to keep black voters in the civil rights mindset. We only hear about how the civil rights era impacted black voters. We never hear how the civil rights era impacted other ethnic voters. And that's why they have changed the way they have. That's why they vote the way they do now, even to this day. That's why certain candidates with certain platforms appeal to these people, no matter what the polls tell you, no matter their imperfect tools, no matter what the polls tell you, these will be time, and they are tested by time. They are true. They are true guides, even more so than a poll of Wisconsin of only 450 people. That sure as hell was not enough to identify every race and ethnicity. Why do you think we did so much better than so many other pollsters in that state in 2020? Big samples, just granular information about these different ethnicities. All right, so while we wait, one of them, because, oh, that's right, there are two really solid elements. One is ethnicity, or demographic, I should say, but really it's like, think about this as like, there are really two elements that determine how someone may or may not vote. And when you couple ethnicity with religion, you're going to get an even clearer understanding, because there are even some white ethnic groups, if they considered mainline Protestant in certain areas, they will be more liberal than some of the Catholics. Now, that even can be reversed in some of the farm states and in the heartland. There are Protestant Anglos that could be that. Why is that? How could that be? Because of their experience when they got here, where they went, who supported what policies at what time that may or may not have hurt them. How did it impact their communities? Which is the story I'm going to tell of myself in a second. And a great example, let me see, as I have it handy here. Yes. A great example of how even among ethnicity, religion can be a important factor. All right. Is Texas. And honestly, the overall shift, which has been going on for a long time, there is an underlying shift. It's not quite helping all Republicans yet, but it is helping Donald Trump. And I imagine over the long term, if this continues, if things continue the way they are, I imagine over the long term, it probably will help Republicans more. in the future. Okay. So, and I mean, generally speaking, it does again though depend on what direction they intend to move the party. Okay. But in any event, I have it highlighted here. This is interesting. I'm going to go back before we talk about this real quick. All right. This is one of the polls I mentioned yesterday on the makeup show. You don't need to see the board of directors. It's the Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation. And they conduct surveys on, they're surveying all voters, but they really want to know the impact that Hispanic voters have on public opinion in Texas and what that may mean for not only elections but the future of Texas policy. Because remember, Hispanics in a state like Texas is a great example. They have yet to truly flex their political muscles in this country, period. But when it comes to Texas, there are a lot of them who don't vote. When they do, and that happens, they will change the map, depending on who wins them or even competes with them. Of course, you could probably lose them a little bit, but still win so much with other groups. The problem is those other groups are getting more difficult to win in large numbers, insufficient numbers. And I saw somebody in the chat about Wisconsin. We're going to come back to that because that 55% target among white votes, I saw you. Don't worry. I did not miss you. And I definitely hear what you're saying. Every state is different. And when you look at a state like Wisconsin, you do need that 55% because it's telling you, all right, I'm not just doing good enough with those who would call themselves English or American descent, whites of American or English descent, which we separate because English can be a little bit more hoity-toity, a little bit more bougie, and certainly a little more liberal. Those who say they're American are about as flag-waving Trumpy as you can be. They may even be the same ethnic descent. Oh, by the way, about the 23andMe thing. I forgot. How could I have forgotten? We imagine these communities because, of course, I had a friend, my buddy Larry, he goes down. He's as Italian as the next guy. But he had a little bit of Middle Eastern blood, which I had to explain to him, the Saracen conquest of Sicily and other parts of Italy. And then he had like 16% black. Again, I had to explain to him the history. So he doesn't mean he's no longer Italian. Of course, he was raised Italian. We imagine these communities, we're part of these communities, and it's more important. It's more impactful than what may be actually in our DNA. I'm Italian and I have some Greek. I'm sure I'm filled with a lot of crazy stuff in my DNA, but I'm Italian. I was raised Italian. I lived in Italian communities. I do have some elements of my Greek culture that I carry along, but for the most part, I am Italian. All right. And religion can change even among Italians how somebody votes. If you are Italian and you're Catholic, you're definitely going to be conservative, or at least more so, but they can swing. Look at Bucks County. There's huge numbers of them in Bucks County. Sometimes they vote Republican. Sometimes they vote Democrat. Republicans typically win them, but, not by a lot. If you are an Italian who has converted from Catholicism to Protestantism, especially like if you are an evangelical Protestant, you are far more likely to vote Republican. So ethnicity matters, but religion does give us a concept of what community within that ethnicity we may be in, or someone may be in. In this case, let me just read the whole paragraph before we, because I do want to read this video. Okay. All right. In a 2024 presidential election featuring 5 candidates, look, Trump holds a 12-point lead, whether it's the 5 candidates or it is just the head-to-head between Biden and Trump. Trump leads Biden by 12, which is more than he led by in this poll at any point leading up into the 2020 election. it does appear Donald Trump is going to win Texas by a larger margin, or at least he would today if the election was held today. But this is now numerous polls that are showing this. If Kennedy is not on the ballot, 26% of his voters intend to vote for Trump, 21% for Biden, and 17% for minor party candidates, with 36% still unsure how they would vote in November. Kennedy absolutely hurting Trump here, not even surprised in a state like Texas. 94% of Trump voters and 93% of Biden voters say they will not change their mind between now and November. That is a bad sign for Biden. It shows that people, their heels are dug in. And considering he's trailing right now, if it's like this in other states or nationally, that is what we expect. I tell you all the time that truly persuadable is not as low as 3 or 4% as some of the, that Pew Research poll we went over last week indicated it was, but 7% and in a year that's really elastic, maybe 12, but this is about right for this point specifically. And that's a bad sign. It was much more elastic in 2020. Even though there was almost no undecideds. It was weird. They would say, I'm voting for this person, but if you asked them if they could change their mind, it would fluctuate. It could go as high as 12%. 41% of Kennedy's voters say they won't change their mind. 59 may. Here's what we're getting to here. Trump holds a modest 4-point lead in vote intention over Biden among Hispanics, with his lead due in part to his advantage among Hispanic born-again Christians, 61 to 18%. And among Hispanics without a 4-year college degree. Listen, how can I put this? I'm trying to be delicate but true here. No matter how many records Trump wins with his evangelical share of the vote, there is a stubborn group, white being very, very small, much less so in the teens, but non-white evangelicals. This is why we separate in our crosstabs. Evangelical, yes or no, white or non-white. We do that different. In most of our polling, if the sample size is big enough, this is why we do this, to show you that there are, in fact, still evangelicals who vote Democrat. With Trump, that Hispanic split is much different. Much different. Ted Cruz is not being afforded that margin. Why is that? I thought Hispanics were supposed to be more conservative. Why is that? Ted Cruz is a typical conservative. Because of populism. That's who these groups are. They are, yes, socially conservative, but they are economically for the little guy. These stupid fools on Twitter with their stupid misleading charts. The National Review crowd. Populism's for idiot. Really? When was the last time your wing of that party won an election? Rob. Right. When the electorate was still 80% white. And barely. But like 0.2% in Iowa. Even though your guy had a 90% approval rating, which you all squandered with a stupid ass war that people thought took attention away from their own economic pain and spent it on BS thousands of miles away. And then you chased them all away. And then they started voting 75-25 for Barack Obama. 72-27, Barack Obama. Trump chipped away at a little bit, got in the low 30s against Hillary Clinton, mid 30s, low 30s, depending on which one you believe. Got in the high 30s in 2020, and now we're here. Another thing about that imagined community, folks, you never want to imagine that it's dying. And when someone's own ethnic what do you want to call it? Ethnic origin, national origin, race, ethnicity is no longer the dominant ethnicity. They don't want to admit it. And they keep up with this, this pretense as if they're still the dominant force in society. Learn to read the handwriting on the wall. Did you not go to freaking preschool? This isn't complicated arithmetic. In the 2024 Texas Senate election, Ted Cruz leads, but he only leads by 5. I cannot stress enough that the Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation specializes in polling Hispanics in Texas. They are not always, on the money here, folks. But they're specifically, they're not going to do what many other pollsters may do, underrepresent this group in this electorate. They're not going to collect just enough responses and say, okay, I'm done. Or too few and pretend like they did. Why? Because Colin Allred is leading with Hispanics. That's why. While Trump is leading Biden, Colin Allred leads Ted Cruz by 5 points among Hispanics, which isn't bad for Ted Cruz. It's not horrible. But Colin Allred is doing better among non-religious Hispanics than Biden is doing against Trump, which is something we've been pointing out for a while, by the way. By the way, also, he's doing better than those with a college degree. So you're not even getting that group. Being less Trumpy, being less populist, being traditional conservative, you're still not even getting that group. And you're not doing any better in the suburbs. So what is the point? What exactly is the point? What are you doing here? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. This is now the second poll that shows that Trump is outperforming. All right, let's go to the 2020 election real quick, because there are some areas we got to point out. I could use big data poll as well to show you. Yesterday, I wanted to talk a lot more about southeastern Michigan, and we just did not have the time, but we do now. So I'd like to do that if that is okay with you guys. All right. I'll do it in a second, but I want to show you the results of the election. So here's why Trump lost Michigan. For all of the talk, and I brought up, somebody had posted a Red Eagle tweet in the locals chat, and I addressed it because they're right. For all of the talk about how there's like a revolt among the Arab population in Michigan, who, by the way, has enough votes to account for all of Joe Biden's margin, almost. About 150,000. In a turnout scenario like this one. However, that's not, and while Trump, that is part of it, that's true. That does not explain why Donald Trump is doing better in Michigan now than he did in 2020. And then not only that, but also why Michigan appears to be more Trumpy this year than Wisconsin. Sometimes even Pennsylvania. And in our polling, when it was the head-to-head Trump versus Biden without generics, without third parties, named, whatever it may be, Trump led by 2 in Pennsylvania, led by 3 in Michigan. Okay. First of all, we all know Detroit. Wayne County, Detroit, Democrats are going to notch a ton of votes out of here. If Donald Trump really does do better with the black vote and wins the share that some of these polls are suggesting, then he will, reach 33, maybe higher in Wayne County, along with the other demographics that we're going to talk about in a second. He could hit close to 35 in Wayne. If that happens, you're talking about a massive number of votes that gets chopped off of Joe Biden's nearly more than 300,000 plus net advantage just out of Wayne. But then there are the Detroit suburbs. Okay. And you got really two kinds of what you would call the Detroit suburbs. You have Oakland, which is more college educated, certainly more bougie, and then you have Macomb. All right, those two counties are very good um, representatives because there are others. Monroe's certainly more Republican than Macomb. And yes, it borders on Wayne County. But when we talk about the suburbs, Washtenaw is different. That's even more Democratic than Wayne. It's just less voters, but it's a different attitude, different ethnicities, different educational backgrounds, different industry. I mean, one is really, you're talking about like more like academia versus urban industry. It's two totally different crowds. All right. So Trump's winning Macomb here, as you can see, won it by about 8 points. Okay. And Biden is winning Oakland here. He won it by about 14 points, almost on the dot, actually. So this is why Trump, oh, and to the north of that, excuse me, because there are extensions of that white working class. And to some degree, there is also white collar movement too that's connected to Michigan industry that is turning against Joe Biden. So this auto industry, this electric cars thing, it's a big deal. It is a big deal. All right, so you have north of Oakland, of course, Genesee, which is a tougher county for Republicans to carry, but Donald Trump does very well for a Republican there. He did better against Hillary. But don't expect you don't expect if he could still carry the state and lose. And then you have Saginaw, okay, and Biden barely carried Saginaw last time. It is a county that Trump carried over Hillary Clinton. It was an Obama, Trump, Biden county. It's a great because Trump still held Macomb. Macomb voted for Obama, not once, but twice. Macomb voted for Gretchen Whitmer over Tudor Dixon. It's important to note Macomb is a Trumpy county. Republicans, generic Republicans, will still win Monroe. They won't win it by this much or more because it looks like Trump is probably going to hit the he could hit mid 60s in Monroe at this point. He could. Low 60s, easy. They'll win it, but they'll win it with like 56%. They're not going to win it like this. And then in Macomb, they lose it. They just flat out lose it. If you run a voter analysis right now, because there are no voter registration by party numbers in Michigan, of course, so you have to run like an AI or a machine learning model that infers based on primary votes, based on all other attributes, such as donating to candidates, donating to whatever it may be. There are numerous attributes that are attached to the voter file, that record on the voter file, that voter telling us whether or not they're an inferred Republican or Democrat. If you run an inference model in Macomb right now, you will see that it is still majority Democrat, even though Trump still does this. As it stands right now, you have these kind of like Anglo American and then more bougie. You got those. If like you poll, you get a white voter. What are you? If they're English in Macomb, for instance, they're gonna say, "Oh, I'm American. I'm American through and through." You know. And then if you were to poll in Oakland, for instance, and the same thing goes, think parts of Pennsylvania when we're talking about like Delco, they're going to say what people in Oakland are more likely to say. I'm English if they are of Anglo ethnic origin. Then you have, however, very different people out in what used to be traditional Republican Kent County. Trump barely won it in 2016, and he did lose it to Joe Biden in 2020. By the way, he also lost after carrying the border county, Muskegon. Why? Totally different ethnicities. Dutch. Of a Dutch Protestant, trying to think of somebody who fits this bill to characterize this real well. They're not quite Mormons with how they approach Donald Trump. And they're not quite, they're not like a mix of like German Dutch or even Dutch Catholic. They're different. They're more moderate, bougie. They're a more moderate, bougie ethnicity. And in the Grand Rapids area, there are a lot of like where there's going to be Republican crossover, that when somebody like a Trump is on the ballot, that's where it's going to be. Some of them at this point are even now just considering themselves Democrats. Kent was once a Republican I wouldn't say stronghold, but kind of. And now here's where we're at. Muskegon, Trump absolutely would win today. Kent would be very close. Very, very close. But I don't know. We'd have to see. It's possible. It's just that's funny where I'm going with this. That's not where the movement is at. The movement is in southeastern Michigan, where all of that industry is threatened. It just so happens that there are a lot of other ethnicities that absolutely vote more for populist candidates than for, more, internationalists, globalists of any party. And by the way, because if I say if as if it's not pretty conclusive, with Trump doing better with non-white voters, that's where they are in Michigan. So you would expect him to chisel some back. When you go south of Oakland, it gets a lot less bougie, folks. In southern Oakland, it gets a lot less bougie. We're not in Holly anymore. Holly's a town. In fact, it's a town where Slotkin is from. We're not in Holly anymore. We're getting much closer to the Detroit area. Ditto Macomb. When you go further and you get to like Warren, place like Warren, that's where you're going to get the racially non-white, more Trumpy voter, and then the ethnic. There are Scandinavians in Michigan, but this is another reason why it's much more. It makes sense to me when you look by ethnicity that Trump is polling better in Michigan as opposed to Wisconsin, which has a lot more Scandinavians, and even the Scandinavians that Michigan does have, they're not as Swedish. And they're certainly not as like Swedish Protestant or something like that. They are Norwegian Catholics. And again, it's not a dominant group in Michigan. That's not what we're predominantly talking about. And I thought I had it up here, but from the poll on Big Data Poll, I could probably just grab it for you. Let's just go to this one. We'll go to the blog after. Just so you keep the map in your head for a second, and then you will see the difference in why that swing is so prevalent. What am I doing? I'm going right past it. All right. So you can see where Trump is doing much better here. You have the Detroit area. There's a lot of blue there. As you can see, it gets a little bit more redder. As you get to, this is the Macomb, Oakland area. As you get a little bit more north, it gets a little, and especially to the west, it's a little bit more Trumpy. As you get closer to the Detroit area, it gets more blue. Ditto Macomb. As you get more southern in Macomb, it gets bluer. As it's more north, it gets redder. And by the way, even the Grand Rapids area looked more Trumpy. It did. It really did. All right. So did I put it? I may have to get it from mine. I'm not sure if publicly. Now, I don't always like to put it in because people don't always understand. Yeah, ethnicity is here. People don't always understand, and they're small numbers, and I don't like to mislead people. When we get done, you know what? We could maybe try now. I'd like another round, one more round of the Rust Belt poll, and then we can try to combine ethnicities. All right. After this, because there is something going on here in Michigan that I think can somewhat be tied to a story like mine. We're just talking about different groups. Um, there have been events, not recently, but in the not so distant past that people no longer remember. It's just that we're not talking about Italians and Irish and others unhappy with what's going on in the urban setting, what was once their neighborhoods, for instance. Like for in our example, many of my people came from the Bronx and Brooklyn. That's where they lived. And then later they would move to Staten Island. That was the place to try to get a way to raise your family. And as there's no other way to put it, as the shitty urbanization encroached upon your neighborhoods, there was a great deal of resentment toward the party in power that was doing that. And that's what led some of those ethnic groups to have a backlash in some respects. Again, because of course there are other ethnic groups that party was perceived to have been favoring. They were very protective over these neighborhoods and these and their communities. Very protective. And they saw them as a threat to that order in their neighborhood. And then many of them do what? And again, Kevin Phillips went over this a lot. What did people do? Come on, book lovers, you know this answer. Let me try to get the book. They left. They migrated. Like mine, for instance. There's nobody left in New York anymore. There's nobody left in the 5 boroughs anymore. Certainly conservative, Italian, Catholic. Once upon a time, my grandfather, of course, did not. I was part of the Italian Democratic machine in the boroughs, a proud Democrat. My grandfather did not vote for a Republican, neither did my grandmother until Ronald Reagan. You were just not a good Italian Roman Catholic if you voted Republican. Not back then. They gave Bush a chance, Herbert Walker Bush. Why? Because he was Ronnie's number 2. Not because that's their ethnic voting pattern or their ethnic, their party that gets the loyalties of that ethnic group of people. Ronnie talked about welfare queens. And in the heads of, whether it's right or wrong is irrelevant. I'm just telling you how it works. In the heads of my grandfather and my grandmother, who knew him as an actor, as the head of the SAG. He was popular as a governor of California. Nice guy, friendly guy, the Gipper, the great communicator. You know what, Ronnie? You're right. Those damn welfare queens, I'm breaking my ass and they're destroying my neighborhood. I had to leave Scranton Avenue because of people who wanted to commit crime all day. And take from me, that worked for that time. But they also didn't like the big machine when they got here, when they came off the boat. The machine, the establishmentarians that were here in power at the time, did what? Did they help them? No. Even though very different than some other racial groups, most Italians came here with an extreme love for this country. My grandfather fought against his own country. He viewed Mussolini to be a disgusting tyrant. And I love being Italian, but there's a reason why America is so much better. It's the reason why America is so much more powerful. It's the reason why the quality of living in America is so much higher. Standard of living is so much higher. So while we're happy and proud to be Italian, we are American. And you want to defend that little piece from perceived other groups that are coming to get that piece. Same thing happened with the Jewish community. Same thing. When we eventually moved to the suburbs of Jersey, we moved in enclave. We move in pockets, enclaves. We integrated somewhat. There was a family. The husband was Italian, the wife was Polish, the kids were Italian and Polish. There was one or two Jewish families running from the five boroughs the same way we were, but mostly it was Italian Roman Catholic. After Ronnie, and Herbert Walker, that was the end of their flirt with the Republican Party. They're not alive anymore. But they most certainly would have voted for another Bill Clinton-like Democrat. They would never have voted for a Mitt Romney. I suspect if my grandparents were still alive, they would have done what a lot of other Italian Roman Catholics did, what a lot of others, by the way, and I'm going to bring up something in a second, did not vote. I'm not voting for a scumbag like Mitt Romney, a taker, a plunderer, a technocrat, or a plutocrat, whichever one you think fits better. I'm not voting for him, but I'm sure as hell not voting for a leftist like Barack Obama. And his race wouldn't have had anything to do with it. They probably would have voted for him the first time over John McCain. Probably. If you really go back and, put into context what that election was about, it was about more war and more suffering or fixing the domestic situation at home. That just, by the way, blew up in everyone's face. They absolutely would have voted for Barack Obama. Not all families picked up and that's just one story. But even among them, not all of them just picked up and went to Jersey. Some of them went to Bucks County. That's what's maintaining the mid to high single-digit loss that Republicans face in Bucks County. In the face of losing more and more of the Anglo-bougie English descent suburbs, even of Protestant denomination or no denomination, because, of course, the English denomination is getting less and less religious as we go. All right. Ethnicity. You can see just from the poll which groups make up a very big deal in a state like Michigan. You can see very clearly the Dutch that are out in Western Michigan. The Scandinavians don't play that much of a role here. And out of 1,218 interviews, only 11 were Swedish. There's literally no Finns here, are there? Oh, yeah, there's 8 who are Finnish. 4 that are Norwegian. 2 that are Danish. Most of them called them, and how people identify is a pretty good indicator as to how, they're going to vote or what's going to go on. In 2020, a hell of a lot more people told us they were of English descent. Even though that American and English is the same damn thing. Their ties have completely been cut with the mother country. They're going to be less monarchist, less government-centered, less bougie. If they're English, though, if they still think they're English, they have this connection, this tie to that answer. Oh, man, I'm way past the damn thing. All right, we'll come back and look at this in a second here. I can't believe how far past I am on it. I was supposed to take a break at 12:45. Otherwise, I'm not going to get them all through. By the way, even in 2020, because English is not really a swing group, they're usually tight, and often Democrats hold an advantage with them. And that's what's so interesting. And I want to come back and show you why, when you're looking at why ethnicity matters, Michigan does appear that it is much more Trumpy, and there's good reason for it, or at least the argument can be made that there is very good reason for it. What am I missing here? I feel like I'm missing something. No, I feel like I missed something. I know, but we could take 2 seconds on the other thing that I wanted to talk about, but I'm just kind of trying to share Pennsylvania in case we get somebody who's got a chance to come by for a visit, because he's got a very similar story All right. All right. But before we get back to it, let's just talk a word from our sponsors. All right. Um, First and foremost, folks, first and foremost, I don't know how I put it exactly yesterday, but in truth, I really just don't know how more people don't understand what's going on here and how this isn't like a major story considering what had happened during the COVID era. I just don't know how well, I know. Media took Big Pharma's money. That's how. I mean, that's that's how it is. It's not that much of a mystery. It's just I guess when you grew up in the era where I did, where even though you knew the media was biased, you did not think it would get to this point where they just wholly ignore stuff this blatant. But in any way, it wasn't that long ago that ruling came down about the FDA. And that lack of honesty is giving me deja vu. I feel like we've been on this ride before. The US government before collaborated with Chinese scientists and again on a project aimed at making certain strains of bird flu more infectious and more deadly. Gain of function? Sound familiar? Another thing they denied. So, what do we think happens next? Someone gets infected with bird flu. And now, shockingly, scientists are saying that this particular bird flu strain could be, and I quote, 100 times worse than COVID, unquote. These people are just unbelievable. Never ends. It never ends. How long until they try to force the mask, force the lockdowns, force the vaccines? Right in time for the elections, the bird flu. Either way, folks, do you have what your family needs this time around? Anyone who's paying attention knows the medical tyrants are far from done with us. But Americans are waking up and they're understanding now more than ever we need to have these life saving medications on hand. They're not just remedies, they're lifelines for the next time, which could be any day now. We know there'll be a next time. If the scientists, the white lab coaters following this bird flu strain have anything to say about it. The wellness company's prescription medical emergency kit contains 8 life-saving medications. Include those doctors just don't want to prescribe to you. Ivermectin, amoxicillin, Z-Pak, all with a guidebook and more to tell you exactly how and when to use them. You won't find anything like this in a store or a pharmacy. And every American should have at least one of these in their home. Laura and I have multiple of them. Ordering your kit takes less than 2 minutes and couldn't be simpler. The link is in the description. Go check it out. It is, quote, twc.health/TPP. One more time. It's twc.health/TPP. Use the code TPP to purchase your kit. Get yourself $30 off and free shipping. This is for the cost of a single doctor's visit. All 8 prescription medications will be shipped to your door. Whether it's the bird flu, monkeypox, cyber attacks, drugstore shortages, which happened last time, you'll have what you need no matter what. Safeguard your health today. Go to twc.health/TPP and use the code TPP at checkout. Again, that will get you $30 off, free shipping. I don't know how you don't have multiple of these puppies under the vanity, in the closet, in your emergency bug out area. We have one where, we have one in our bathroom, somewhere in our bathroom, and then one in the bug out closet, which is it is what it says. It is what it is. It shouldn't be called the bug out closet. We just kind of started calling it that because it's more than just bugging out. Could be the hunker down closet if you wanted it to be. It's where we keep all of the emergency supplies, the water storage stuff, food kits. We have 72-hour food kits, and then we have long-term, which you guys know who we love. And this is a must because it may not be hard in a situation to find food, even water, but it will always be difficult to find those medications. And These doctors are getting crazy. I don't know why anybody ever trusted people in a white lab coat. Maybe it was my own experience with them. Well, the thing is, I knew better. I can't blame them wholly for pain for or Purdue Pharma or anything for painkillers, but I never trusted anybody in a white lab coat when it came to anything else, bird flu, swine flu, COVID, because in my experience, they will lie for money. Hell, the FDA lied for money. The guy who was supposed to be approving OxyContin was working at Purdue Pharma 6 months after he finally passed the application through. At first, he fought with them over the wording. It's proven to be less addictive because it is continuous release or something like that. That was bullshit. Of course, it's not true. Wasn't proven to be anything. If you looked at their clinical trials, there are awful, awful, awful experiences. One person tried to jump out of a window because they took her off. Just terrible. Just terrible. So I never trusted them. And I don't trust them to give me what I need when I need it. All right. It's 101. Why don't we give the old People's Pundit a voice break? Let's watch this clip. I don't know. I'll try to find out while we're watching the clip what's going on. Otherwise, we'll just keep rolling through ethnicities when we come back. But I do want to take a short break from this and just watch something because there was a big, I don't want to, I guess it is case. I guess you could still call it case. Justice Clarence Thomas is back. He's back listening to arguments at the Supreme Court, oral arguments, and he's back becoming a target of the left. I'll explain to you why that is and what people say, but their mandate did not recuse himself over a case on which the oral arguments were yesterday, which had to do with the obstruction charges with J6 people. Here's the worst part about this. Jack Smith and the D.C. court judges who are not only dealing with this, but dealing with Trump, because all these J6ers, there's so many with this ruling that could be the burden, the charges could be alleviated. But Jack Smith and the judges have determined, and other prosecutors in the J6 cases have determined, because this has to do with part of Trump's indictment as well, that if the Supreme Court throws this out, which many people believe they will, they're going to increase the penalties for the other charges. Not only for Trump, but the J6ers. These people are tyrants. These people are petty tyrants. And petty because they're not sending people to get killed yet, or rounding them up to put them in work camps or anything. Petty because that's as petty as it gets. You're told you're implementing the law incorrectly and abusively by the highest court in the land. And as a nana poo-poo, you level more serious punishments onto different charges that don't require punishments of that degree. You're a piece of shit. There's no other word for you. You're a piece of shit. You're a petty tyrant. And in this life or the next, you're going to get what's coming to you. And if you don't believe that, you know what? I'm sad for you. But I think I'll try to become part of that welcoming committee. I think I'll take you to the door myself. Because I want to watch. I want to watch. Maybe I won't have those feelings up anymore, but they say you don't. But I don't know how we're supposed to respect or not dislike people who enjoy inflicting misery, stress, fear, punishment, pain on other human beings. I don't know what else to think of them, wish for them, or call them other than pieces of shit. Let's roll this tape.
General Prelogger.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court. On January 6, 2021, a violent mob stormed the United States Capitol and disrupted the peaceful transition of power. Many crimes occurred that day, But in plain English, the fundamental wrong committed by many of the rioters, including petitioner, was a deliberate attempt to stop the joint session of Congress from certifying the results of the election. That is, they obstructed Congress's work in that official proceeding. The government accordingly charged petitioner with violating Section 1512C2, an obstruction offense that directly reads onto his conduct. The case as it comes to this court presents a straightforward question of statutory interpretation. Did petitioner obstruct, influence, or impede the joint session of Congress? The answer is equally straightforward. Yes, he obstructed that official proceeding. The terms of the statute unambiguously encompass his conduct. Petitioner doesn't really argue that his actions fall outside the plain meaning of what it is to obstruct. Instead, he asks this court to impose an atextual limit on the actus reus. In his view, because Section 1512C1 covers tampering with documents and other physical evidence, the separate prohibition in Section 1512C2 should be limited to acts of evidence impairment. But that limit has no basis in the text or tools of construction.
Every time I play something I want for a break, which like give my voice a break, take a break like other people do, I just can't stand listening. I just can't listen. I just get to it. And I know I don't care which side it is. I'm just get to it. Let's go. I want to get to the heart of it so you all know why I'm playing the clip.
His reading hinges on the word otherwise, but that word means in a different manner, not in the same manner.
Me either, brother.
Prohibitions in Section 1512C2 aren't unified items on a list where you could apply associated words canons. They're separate provisions. They have their own sets of verbs and their own nouns. They each independently prohibit attempts, which would be duplication that makes no sense on petitioner's reading. And Congress included a distinct mental state requirement in C1 that it chose not to repeat in C2. Section 1512C2, by its terms, is not limited to evidence impairment. Instead, it's a classic catch-all. C1 covers specified acts that obstruct an official proceeding, and C2 covers all other acts that obstruct an official proceeding in a different manner. The court should say so and allow this case to proceed to trial. I welcome the court's questions.
General, there have been many violent protests that have interfered with proceedings. Has the government applied this provision to other protests in the past, and has this been the government's position throughout the lifespan of the statute?
It has certainly been the government's position since the enactment of 1512C2 that it covers the myriad forms of obstructing an official proceeding and that it's not limited to some kind of evidence impairment gloss.
Let me just point out that in the 80s, which was not that long ago, a group of radical left-wing feminists planted a bomb in the Senate building, and it went off. They did not chase down every member of that organization and charge them with obstruction with an official proceeding. They charged those that were caught and with the act, and that was it. Nobody from the Democratic Party was charged for inciting a bomb to be set off or an obstruction or official proceeding or anything like that because they hated Ronald Reagan, who, by the way, was a victim of an assassination attempt.
So have you enforced it in that
crazy
manner?
Bullshit.
We have enforced it in a variety of prosecutions that
Really, when people sandwich Jeff Flake in the elevator, okay, during the confirmation of a justice who is sitting on that court right now, and prevented him from casting his vote, forced him, bullied him with their physical intimidation. And they certainly stopped the Senate proceeding. They forced the Senate to wait till Monday to vote on the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding?
don't focus on evidence tampering. Now, I can't give you an example of enforcing it in a situation where people have violently stormed a building in order to prevent an official proceeding, a specified one, from occurring with all of the elements like intent to obstruct.
I just cited one, by the way. I just cited one. There was violence at that, whatever you want to call it, protest.
Knowledge of the proceeding, having the corruptly mens rea, but that's just because I'm not aware of that circumstance ever happening.
Hold on. I'm not aware of that circumstance ever happening. They also overturned cars and lit them on fire to try to stop the inauguration of Donald Trump in the city's capital. I can't provide an example. What a bunch of bullshit. I just provided two.
happening prior to
Great.
January 6th. But just to give you a flavor of some of the other circumstances
Flavor.
where we have prosecuted under this provision, for example, there are situations where we've brought C2 charges because someone tipped off the subject of an investigation to the grand jury's hearings. There was another case where someone tipped off about the identity of an
That's not
undercover
what he
law
said.
enforcement officer.
Protest.
And in those situations, there's no
Protest.
specific evidence, no concrete testimony or physical evidence that the conduct is interfering with. Instead, it's more general obstruction of the proceeding. Justice Alito mentioned the Wright case as well, and that's another one where it was a forged court order that prompted the litigant to dismiss a mandamus petition, but that didn't have anything to do with the evidence that was going to be considered in that proceeding.
So what role does C1 play in your analysis?
So we understand 1512C to split up the world of obstructive conduct of an official proceeding into the C1 offense and into C2. C1 covers everything it enumerates. It's the acts of altering, concealing, destroying records, documents, or other objects. And then C2 would only pick up conduct that obstructs an official proceeding in a
Okay, she's going on and on. This has been applied to hundreds of defendants in the J6 persecution. Hundreds. There is no precedent for this. None.
different way. So there's no duplication or superfluity on our reading.
Especially
Instead,
not at
Congress
that
was
level.
taking this universe and dividing it up into the two separate offenses. And I think that's actually a virtue of our reading as compared to petitioners, because I have not heard him articulate anything that would fall within C1 that wouldn't also come within C2. So on his reading, C2 really does just swallow C1 whole.
Okay, you swallowing something, lady. Listen, the bottom line is this law is usually applied to private corporations when the feds want something, they try to destroy documents or evidence, then they're charged with obstruction of an official proceeding or obstruction of the investigation itself. It has never been, it is not applied to cases like this, and certainly not used to link to other crimes, right? To beef up the charges, other charges that have been slapped on these defendants. That is what they're trying to do. Use it as a way to tell a story that's not really there. It doesn't exist, doesn't meet the standard of the law. You don't have to be a lawyer to see it. Anyone could read the freaking statutes. That's what they're trying to use again, yet again. Novel legal theories. Novel legal theories that are never used before. Democrats just don't have any problem with it. The president himself, for all those who think he's above doing something like this, he's so full of shit. The White House meeting logs and the notes and the documents recovered from the investigation show the original idea to use the Logan Act to go after Michael Flynn and try to squeeze him to flip on Donald Trump was Joe Biden's idea. We know from Obama's own little scribbled notes. Joe Biden's idea to use an ancient law that the founders intended to use for people who were acting as diplomats in an unofficial capacity during the early era of the Republic. It had nothing to do with a would-be, soon-to-be national security advisor to the U.S. president speaking with an ambassador from another foreign power before they take office. Insane to call that a Logan Act violation. Insane. Novel and insane. But they did it.
Well, I mean, in the way you're reading it, C1, C2 almost exists in isolation, certainly not affected by C1.
We don't deny at all that there is a relationship between the two provisions, Justice Thomas.
What is that relationship?
And the relationship is the one Congress specified in the text. It's what follows the word otherwise. That is the relevant degree of similarity. What both C1 and C2 have in common is that they or aim at conduct that obstructs an official proceeding. C1 does so in one way, tampering with records and documents. C2 does so with respect to all other conduct that in a different manner does that. And I think that this has to be the road the court goes down, to look at what Congress actually prescribed with respect to similarity. Because in contrast, if you take up petitioner's invitation to come up with some atextual gloss from C1 to port over into C2, I don't understand what the court could look at to guide its determination of exactly what the relevant similarity would be.
Okay. And in response to this, what we got was a bunch of posts, including from people like Jeffrey Toobin, who called Clarence Thomas a disgrace. I don't know how anyone fair-minded could come up with a, oh my God, he's sleeping. He's having bad dreams. You hear that? That's Winston having either a good dream or a bad dream. He's doing a little burp in his sleep. Oh, listen. Let's see if he does it again. Listen. Wait, let me turn the mic. Oh, you knew I'm looking at you. Yeah, I'm caught. I'm sorry, buddy. I tried to mic you so everybody could hear the most adorable sound in the world. You're such a good little boy. Anyway, and anybody could listen to that, which was a fair legal question, and say he's a disgrace for asking it. And what of course is his motivation? Not the law, the interpretation of the law itself, folks. No, of course not. His interpretation is because his wife herself is an insurrectionist, because she believed the 2020 election was not legitimate, because she believed what obvious at this point, I think, depending on how you ask, a majority of voters in multiple battleground states, other pollsters like Rasmussen and others, have found that that it's almost a majority, if not a majority. Exit polls during the primary election shows overwhelmingly that Republican and Republican participant independents don't believe that Joe Biden won the election legitimately. And there's many reasons why that falls into that, and she's entitled to have her own opinion, but they wanted him to recuse himself for it. Let's look at some other examples. Judge Tanya Chutkan, forget about family ties, which she has to people who are Trump haters. She herself is a Trump hater. All right. The judge in the New York civil trial, his wife and his kid are pieces of garbage. They're constantly, during the civil trial, online his wife online trashing Trump while he's at the gym being a dirty old man. What do you call it? Girls, ladies, what do you call it when some guy just creeper, dirty old man creeper, all up on young women he has no business being with, right? While he's doing that, she's posting on her friggin' Facebook and Instagram page about how she can't stand and she hates Donald Trump. I mean, families who donated, the judge on the Colorado Supreme Court who has given thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to Democrats over the years. I can go on and on and on. They never recused themselves. Justice Elena Kagan was the Solicitor General who argued in favor of Obamacare. Yet, while she got to the Supreme Court to listen to oral arguments about that case, guess what? She did not recuse herself. So this only goes one way. Only goes one way. You know what? Our guest is here, and I'd like to bring him on if he's ready to rock and roll. I don't know. I know he's got some tech stuff going on. All right. I see him smiling, so I guess he's ready. Yeah, because I want to get back to the ethnicity thing. I probably talk for weeks about it. And I think it is time, after looking at that Michigan data, I think it is time to compile some of the ethnicity responses over periods of different polls. And we'll just do it by vote preference. And we'll do it by like Joe Biden's approval rating, right? We'll tie their other demographics to it, but we'll just take those questions and we'll basically make a much larger sample for those ethnicities. The goal is, by the time we get to election season, really full bore general election season, maybe August or Labor Day, hell, maybe even July, in many of the battleground states and nationally, we will have ethnicity detail data. So if you are white, what is your ethnic origin? If you are Hispanic, where do you come from? What national origin do you have? If you are, we also do it with Asians, but certainly with white and Hispanic nationally, we should have it. And the goal is to see a couple of things. Has this changed over time? Has this been relatively stagnant? And among those who really are swing voters, how are they going? How are they moving? And then the third would be, how is each candidate doing among these key groups that are going to make up huge parts of the coalition in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania? All right. So while again, there are a lot of Germans, there are a lot of English Americans, of course, a lot of Germans in the state of Pennsylvania. There's also a lot of Irish and Scot Irish and Italians, but German ethnicity is much bigger, which typically is much better for Trump, but there are some swingy votes in there. In Wisconsin, even though it's very white, whiter even than the other two. The problem is that there are larger numbers of Scandinavians, so you have to do very well among Norwegian voters, very well among those who identify as Americans, and very well as not get clobbered with those who say they are English. So with that in mind, I'm going to bring on my guest here, and my friend, of course, Sean Parnell from the great state of Pennsylvania, which is like perfect for this episode. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing okay. If I have some internet issues in between all this,
Yeah.
I apologize in advance.
I was going to tell people that.
I had a tech guy here and found out
There he goes.
that I've had and I'm wondering, what the hell is wrong with my internet? What's going on? And apparently it's that.
Can you say what it is again? Because you did glitch out as you were saying what it was. And you're glitching out again. Oh, I hope this works.
Just cyber attack events. 880 cyber.
This is ridiculous.
Can you hear me?
I can. You're bouncing in and out, but enough for me to gather what you said. You have way too many cyber attack events.
Yes, 880. 880.
Everybody's getting everyone gets them to some degree, but I told Sean that this would not surprise me because this is not is like Wi-Fi connection. He's hardlined like you're supposed to be as you're doing these shows. I don't know. Let's see if you can do it, Sean. I don't know. What are you going to do for tonight if you're going to have these problems?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. Like they said that they could. Can you hear me? Is it coming through okay?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they said they're going to try to run me a private line so that because right now I share service with everybody in my area.
Everybody does. Oh man, he's not going to be able to stay. He's got such a Rich for the guest host on Battleground tonight. Oh man, Nico, I don't know. That's a big responsibility. I don't know if he's going to pop in and out. I don't know if he even knows he's out right now, but this is routinely becoming a big problem. We did have a private line installed. Most people have a singular box where in their neighborhood where they get their internet from. Here, let me pop him off so he just doesn't look, the way he looks. And when he comes back, I'll put him back on. But yeah, I mean, this is what people have to deal with. Sean, of course, ran for the nomination for U.S. He ran for Congress, and then he ran for the nomination, and he would have won it, by the way, if Republicans, old school Rhino Republicans, had a hand in that dirty, disgusting trick. But yeah, great example because he's on their radar, and that's pathetic and tragic that people aren't allowed to speak their piece, say what they want to say, give their opinion. And now he's going to need a private line. We got one because we were the first ones built on our block in our neighborhood. We have, well, I don't want it. Laura always gets mad when I give too much detail. She's probably right. There are a lot of sickos out there. He's trying to get back on. He just texted me. But yeah, basically, I have a private line from being the first one there. And then later when the others went up, they never switched it back. There he goes again, having his little nightmares. You okay, buddy? He likes to sit by my feet. I'm on a stool. I like the raised desk, and I like to stand a lot, but I'm sitting right now on like a bar stool height kind of thing because I like the raised thing. And he's underneath it, and he's having like these little dreams. It sounds like somebody's trying to take his bone or something. You all right, dude? Did somebody take hey, dude, you okay? You want to say hello to everybody? Or are you not really up yet? Nah, he's doing the paw thing over his eyes. You're not really up yet? So cute. So cute. Just for the record, he still should have beaten that celebrity dog. I'm just saying. You okay, dude? You look like you're awake now. You need to go out? I may have to let him out. Laura will take him because obviously I got this going on. Hang on, let's look at the Supreme Court for 1 second. And then look at the Supreme Court. Let me let him out and tell Laura to take him. Come on, little buddy. Come on, little buddy. Hey, you want to go out? Hey, Laura. He just woke up. I think he's got to go out. He was having dreams. I think somebody was taking his bone. He was having. It was the cutest thing you'll ever hear. It was like. Yeah, you gotta find it. Laura has such a hard time bonding with the dogs because she had a dog that she absolutely loved to pieces, and it was a great. It was a German Shepherd. That dog loved her, and she loved that dog. And she has such a hard time bonding with dogs now because she just, sometimes that happens. And she was worried she wasn't going to really bond with Winston. Man, that's not a problem anymore. And he loves her. It's so cute. It's just hilarious. It's just hilarious to watch. Like you will not see Laura on the floor. Like she's not a woman that gets on the floor, and she'll like play with this little puppy on the floor. And like the other night, when we got back, and she had obviously with everything that was going on, she had a really shit day, and I'm like, where is she? Come in the bedroom. I'm like, where is this woman? She's on the other side of the bed on the floor with him, like because he got his little house we bring in, and I hear, I'm like overhearing, and I'm like, oh man, this woman is smitten with this dog. It's good. I'm glad. But so much it's definitely not my dog. He knows I'm the man of the house, but it looks like he's got the play relationship with my little 4-year-old because they're both crazy, and they have like puppy, crazy kid, young energy going on. They chase each other around in circles because you could walk through a loop in circles in my house. You could go from the living room to the dining room. There are archways, and that was an archway from the dining room to the foyer and the living room, and then to the kitchen. And then the kitchen is open where you can run through the breakfast nook and then back in the living room. These guys are just going around in a circle, chasing each other around. The dog grabs the toy, he runs. He grabs the toy, he runs, and they chase each other. It's crazy. He has that relationship with my little one. He loves my oldest son, and that's like his like buddy. Laura is most definitely the mommy figure, and like I get like very little affection. And that's all right. Whatever. I mean, he knows and he comes to me. He loves me, of course. But there's just everyone's got different kinds of relationships with the dog, and it's funny. It's just funny. Right. So I know this guy Engeron, Judge Engeron. The audacity of these people. The audacity of these people to complain about Judge Thomas recusing himself after all of these other judges did not a peep. Not a peep. And then you got, their friends in the media. Speaking of Sean, and I know he's having issues right now, I would have asked him about this. What is this all over anyway with J6, right? They just find it to be so horrid. Are you joking me? Do you have any idea how many times Democrats have done this? Chris Saliza, whatever his name is, Slime, right? Whatever his name is. This guy has let me get rid of this, make that bigger. Let me just make sure that there's nothing private. Nah, there's nothing private. I don't want to blow, confidence is confidence. So where's my thing? Give me a second. 1 second. He's trying to get back on. If he's having, what is he going to do about Battleground tonight, though, man? I feel bad. Man, let me just let him know. It's, maybe get a, maybe use a, what do they call those things? A hotspot? Yeah. Or something like that, like I can use my phone as a hotspot. No joke. I do have like a plan where it probably could run a show or two without getting really slow. My hotspot works very well when I'm traveling. Anyway, Here's Sean responding to Chris Eliza. Trump didn't try to overturn the election, right? Because the original tweet was this, okay? Chris Eliza saying, again, this is historic nonsense propaganda, which, by the way, on the Ether show, we talked about this. More people died of COVID under Biden than Trump. Trump did not try to overturn an election, and you saying that just shows what a partisan hack you are, you know? And then the American people deserve much better than this garbage. The original tweet was objectively the Trump years were worse. We went over this tweet on the Ether show. You guys didn't hear it, obviously, which really, really sucks. But objectively, you're a stupid ass. All right. Objectively, more people died from COVID under Joe Biden. Objectively, more people are struggling to buy stapled goods because Joe Biden has skyrocketed inflation. Because Joe Biden decided that he was going to give all of his friends and special interests a kickback, like Obama gave them a kickback, his donors, his supporters, his big business people, his big labor people, all the people in health and everywhere that expected kickbacks. He gave them the American Investment and Recovery Act or whatever it was called. He gave them that. It was a load of crap. It was a kickback for nothing. As it turns out, right, Brock? Shovel-ready jobs weren't so shovel-ready. Remember that? I mean, there's been so much study and analysis on that thing. It was nothing but a waste of money, using your money to pay back his bribes. I mean, that's what that was. And in this case, in the case of Joe Biden, nothing needed to be done again. You wanted to give people stimulus, that's fine, but that's not what that bill was about. The CARES Act already gave schools all the money they needed, or gave states the money they needed to then in turn provide their schools with the funding needed to follow the CDC guidelines to, quote, safely reopen under the pandemic. So this was trillions and trillions in green pet projects, trillions, well, not of just for that, but trillions made up of crap like that, made up of double funding for COVID scams, right? Made up of all of this nonsense. And Sean went back and just corrected the record, right? And then he goes back. Trump didn't try to overturn an election. Do tell. Ass wipe. Democrats have done this multiple times. North Carolina, after you got stomped by Richard Nixon, as if that was even going to change the result. You still tried to reject the electors. You wanted them to pull basically the same thing. 2004 in Ohio, Barbara Boxer, for crying out loud, not using any affidavit sworn and under penalty of perjury. Oh no, BS exit polls that were all wrong. They wanted, by the way, people from California wanted to deny Ohio their electors. Give me a break. They've been doing this forever. Every time they lose an election, they deny it. And in 2016, Chris, maybe you were comfortable, you slop, behind the cushion of your own desk or whatever it was that you were doing. Maybe you didn't have a window in your office good enough. Maybe you don't have the corner office. You're not worth it at CNN, wherever it is that you work. You couldn't see them overturning the cars and burning them in the damn roads to try to get the inauguration to stop. Give me a break. Now here's Sean again. And by the way, I'm just going to leave that up, brother, because your internet looks clear now. It's coming in and out. You know, I mean, this friggin' guy, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking about Chris. Am I good now? Can you hear me okay?
You look great. Sounds great. Everything's nothing's glitching. I don't want to knock on wood here.
Yeah,
but,
knock on wood. I mean, like,
son of a bitch.
Honestly, Rich, this has been a problem. Did it do it again?
Yeah, and which tells me, I watched you in the preview, man, just to make sure everything was all right. As soon as you go live, something happens. I don't know if you can hear that.
I can hear you.
Okay. It's like as soon as you go live, man, I watched you in the preview. Everything looked good. Everything was good. As soon as you go live, there's a glitch. It's weird.
I don't get it. And it's only been happening the last couple of weeks. I've done this had 800 cyber attack incidences over the last couple of months. 800.
Listen, you're going in and out still, but I can still understand what you're saying. People be patient, you know, like let's try to get this. Your family ancestrally were Democrats in Pennsylvania, like mine were, right? Oh, I want him to answer that so bad. because I don't even have to know Sean to know that the likelihood of that is extremely high. You still there, Sean? Crap. I know he's trying. I'll pull him down. I'll see when he pops back. I'll keep him in the green screen, see when he comes back. But let's go back further than that. Let's go back even further. 2000. Oh my God, I'm thinking about when inauguration is in my head, so I'm writing that out there. If we were to look, for instance, at the state of Pennsylvania, which is Sean's state, okay, there is, let's see if we can get it. Okay, a very, very different map than the one that you will recognize today. All right, and yeah, there it is. Let me try to pull it up big as you can see it. There it is. That's as big as I can get it, guys. Ready? Bang. All right. So here is the state of Pennsylvania. This is the 2000 election, Bush v. Gore. Okay. And I want to just pull up the other ones. So we can give you some of these roughly some of these margins. Out where Sean is from, for instance, which is Western Pennsylvania, you can see towns, even hell, Westmoreland is only light pink. But you can see towns like Cambria. Counties, for crying out loud. You can see counties off to the west, like Lawrence, Beaver. Out west now, you still have Allegheny, but to the west and north of Allegheny, you have Lawrence from north to south, Beaver, Washington, Greene, which is the southwest tip county in Pennsylvania. And then to the east of Greene, that most southern west county, to the east of Greene, you have Fayette, which is one over from that most southwest county. And you can very clearly see how much better Gore did against Bush. Why? Well, even though Bush was certainly, the Bush of 2000 was certainly more of a populist than the Bush of 2004. He was a Bush nonetheless. He was a Republican nonetheless. And we're coming out of the era of Bill Clinton, who was far, far more populist in nature. That's not even, I don't even think that's close. Than the Republicans of their time. He was. And fiscally responsible, he was, right? The first one to go as we progress is Greene County. So by 04, you do see Greene County and Lawrence and Beaver go to George Bush. All right. That is a major change from Gore, even though that election was very close. At the same time, if you're looking at this map right now, what do you see? You see that Chester is still Republican. Okay. Some of the other southeastern counties in the Philadelphia suburbs are not as Democratic as they are now, but you still do see counties like Lehigh, for instance. There will be counties in 04 that Bush will eventually swap out, and that will be somewhat to the north of those counties. For instance, like Carbon County, not that small. It was 33 plus thousand votes, probably almost 34,000 votes from 2020 in that county. You know what? But let's put it up so you can see, and then I can go back and forth. All right. Sean, if he was on, he would tell you that during this era, there's no doubt that his family were ancestral Democrats and they were working class Democrats from Western Pennsylvania. You have this group of white working class in the Pittsburgh area and surrounding area all the way to Westmoreland, even as far as some of those counties like Cambria that we were just talking about. Westmoreland's Republican now, but and believe me, it wasn't always that Republican. And in the Trump era, Trump won it by almost 30 points. That's a lot for a Republican these days if you get turnout as high as he did in Westmoreland, which is about 205,000. If turnout is a little bit lower, Republicans usually widen that margin. But when it's a higher turnout, it gets more difficult. Republicans will maybe carry it by like 20, 25. But there it goes again. Yeah, He's trying, but I don't want to put so much stress on him. I want him to be more concerned about what he's going to do with Battleground, because of course his viewers are going to want to know. I see you guys in the chat. Nah, I don't think it's another Don Smith thing. I don't know. I mean, here's the deal, guys. We were talking about FISA the other day. It was not the other day. What was it? A week or 2 weeks ago at this point, and it was crystal clear. So what in the Sam hell has happened? What happened in that time period? And it could just be that Sean, where he is, running as a Republican and connecting with these working class Democrats in Western Pennsylvania is a real problem for the Democratic Party. So I wouldn't be surprised he got a target on his back, because they are indeed terrified that Sean Parnell will run for Senate again or run for Congress. If he was not taken out of that Senate race, he would have done significantly better than Mehmet Oz. I don't think there's any doubt about that, because Mehmet is not going to appeal to some of these groups that Sean and I we're going to talk about. For instance, Irish Catholics, right? Scot Irish, even to some extent Germans. They were much more of a split vote in the era that we're talking about right now. Very, very different. And I did I? Yeah, because I took the first break late. I blew past the second one. We'll just end a little bit, I don't want to say early, but we'll do the ad on the outgo, and people will stick around. They always do. So in any event, that's where the state lies at that point now. This is the 04 map. Very, very different than the map that you'll see in 2020 or even in 2016. There are only 2 counties that changed, and this is where I will need my county. There are only 2. Well, I'll need the 2016 Pennsylvania map because I got to show you the 2 that did change. And there's a reason for that. And again, not to harp on this book, but it is very important. There are more conservative, somewhat Catholic, more Catholic areas of where there are German descent and Dutch, which used to be a little bit more swingy, but certainly you have Dutch Protestants and others that are different than some of the Dutch voters that you will see in counties like Kent County in Michigan. Even because of that religion factor. And then here's the 2020 map. You're going to see how much different it is. All right. Much redder in a lot of the German occupied areas of what is called in Phillips's work, the non-Yankee Pennsylvania. So in the tri-state area in Pennsylvania, and I don't know if you can see my marker, but I'm trying to circle this area of the Philadelphia suburbs in southeastern Pennsylvania, where you can see that it was light blue in some of these, but she still carried it nonetheless. And this is still considered Yankee Pennsylvania, okay? Because of where people migrated from, where people go, and which ethnicities go where. And later, this is the Mid-Atlantic. It's not that far off. When we're talking about Michigan and elsewhere, why is Marquette blue in some of these counties that are just like, out of nowhere blue? Wisconsin's another great example. Ashton, Bayfield, Douglas, up in the northwestern part of what is otherwise a very ruby red area of Wisconsin, because of migration of certain ethnicities, where these people go. Those Scandinavians that make up a very liberal white vote in Minnesota. Well, guess where they settled? In Wisconsin, right? And when we say Yankee, what we mean is more establishmentarian Anglo-Protestants, but think silk stocking kind of Republicans, right? That's what we're talking about. Their part or their establishment has always been part of the megalopolis, which is a very it's why we have to say Democratic now. It wasn't always, but Democratic now. Erie County, which is in the top left, farthest northwestern county in Pennsylvania. And I'm going to show you it in a bit. Well, my map where you can see 2020. I just need to show you 2016. That is still part of what is called Yankee Pennsylvania because of those ethnicities. It's just carved out. It just barely carves out Erie in the top west. The rest of it, clear across the northern part, or what we call now the conservative, the top of the conservative T, that is not Yankee. And because it's not, it's obviously filled with, I don't know how else to put this. There's no nice way to put it. there used to be considered certain European groups, for instance, who, while considered white, were considered like Central or Eastern European, certainly Southern European, where Anglos used to view them as rather dirty, less sophisticated, less important. I mean, it's no other way to put it. I say the word inferior. They look down on them. Germans, Italians, Poles, Russians, Greeks. All I could keep going down the list. All right. And that's where you see it's much, much redder on this map than it was under George Bush. These people have a lot of economic issues. These ethnicities tend to favor economic concerns over big foreign policy concerns. And if we were to go back, you would see that George Bush he won a lot of these areas. He just didn't win them overwhelmingly. Why? By '04, because you can even see he did slightly better in some of those areas in 2000, but he swapped out votes in '04 and made some of them redder because the national security implications, keeping us safe, et cetera, et cetera. But Republicans began losing their grip on these people when he became a neocon, which is why, by the way, New Hampshire is not the same state it was in '04 or 2000. But he was able to win New Hampshire because he was less on a war footing. They don't like war. They don't like that stuff. Now we're at a point where the Republican Party is seen as not only the party of big business, but they are also seen as the party of war, right? So I don't know if Sean can hear me, but
I can hear you now. Can you hear me? Is it okay?
It looked fine in the preview, so I'm just going to try to see if this works. Tell people where your family is from, what your ethnicity is, and what party they used to support.
Yeah. So you see that blue area from Western Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
It looks like
2000. Yeah.
Oh, wait, what was that? So wait, what year group is that?
I was showing you '04 before. This is 2000 now. It gets even bluer.
Wow. So go closer to present.
Okay, so more closer to present. Let's go to Trump's win over Hillary. Look at that now.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So that little blue area, that one blue area in Western Pennsylvania, that's where my family is from. And that's Allegheny County, which is the most. Now look, it's a blue area. And it's a Democrat stronghold. It contains the city of Pittsburgh, right? But it's also the most populous Republican county in the state. And to answer Rich's question directly, it is so Allegheny County is where my family is from. They are, I come from a family of blue collar union Democrats. Half of my family commuted across state lines to West Virginia to work at Weirton West, which was the U.S. steel plant there. And the other half of my family worked in and around Allegheny County, blue collar trade people in and around the steel mills in Allegheny County for 4 generations. And so now my family is more Republican now than they've ever been. But what's interesting, because they're Italian, so they can be pretty stubborn. Like they're still Democrats. They won't change their registration, but they're more pro-Trump than even my Republican family members.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I had myself muted. Right. Like now they're even more Republican than what traditionally was your Republican family members. Right.
Yeah.
And that's sure. I have the same thing going on. And what was ethnicity again?
Italian.
Right. Same thing with me. We had traditional Republicans who were seen as more bougie in the 80s and the 90s, right? And those who are now Trumpy are more Trumpy and more Republican. Don't care about the mean tweets. Don't care about the bombast, the crass. They don't give a damn about any of that.
They don't.
And that's the same thing, tri-state area. We could go through new parts of New York and New Jersey, and you're going to see the same thing when it comes to, where my family is from. And it is like those bougier old school Republicans who are a little bit less than, or more down on Trump, more critical of Trump, and this is the question, the trade-off factor, like who are there more of? And, let me just put this simply, for people out there, when you're wondering which, ethnic groups you should try to appeal to. How's the wealth gap doing these days? You know what I mean? Like, How's the wealth gap doing? What direction is it going in? It was actually shrinking under Trump for a hot minute there.
For sure.
For a good 2 years, it was shrinking under Donald Trump before COVID, which is just absolutely tragic. It's like a Greek tragedy, you know? And a lot of these groups, those traditional silk stocking Republicans who were here, you know, ethnic groups that were here even before our families immigrated to this country, Sean, they are now Democrats, hands down. And the truth is, they always kind of look down on Southern and Central and Eastern Europeans. Italians were viewed as kind of like lower, less than. You know, what did they call Italians when we got to this country? WAPs. What does that stand for? Without papers, right? And a whole bunch of other dirty, dirty words. You know, people got to Ellis Island, their names were cut, you know, all sorts of stuff. They did not like it. Let's be real. And their concerns were always economic concerns. And once upon a time, Al Gore, being the vice president of Bill Clinton, would have been potentially to them the better economic choice. Oh, those Bushes, they'll get us in another war. His daddy wanted to invade Kuwait. His daddy wanted to invade Iraq. I don't want to do that again. What about us here? What about our American dream? You know, and you know what I'm saying? And then I really want to get to the. Oh, go ahead, because
I was just saying, like, what you talked about. Like, a couple things came to mind as you were talking. One was this Katie Couric interview with Bill Maher. I watched it. It made me sick to my stomach, because when you talk about elites on either side of the aisle, and we really, when you say the uniparty, you know, to me it's almost synonymous with elites. You know, people that hold themselves to a different standard than the rest of us. And as much as I think Bill Maher is trending in the right direction, he's still, to me, a garbage liberal, and Katie Couric is even worse.
Oh,
and
yeah,
she's out there talking about how the core of MAGA or Trump supporters are anti-intellectualism. And that's, and I quote, a real problem. I'm sorry. It just never ceases to amaze me how these people just still to this day do not get it, Rich.
Yeah.
It's like, you look at the towns in Western Pennsylvania and they've closed up shop, Rich. They've, you know, and when towns close up, you know, the tax base goes away, the schools go away. This, you know, when Weirton West, the plant closed down, which again was affiliated with U.S. Steel, that closes down. The Little League team that was sponsored by Weirton West goes away. So opportunities just dry up. And this isn't just something that's unique to Western Pennsylvania. It's also happening in Ohio. It also happened in Michigan. And it's all through Central Pennsylvania. Democrats and Republicans completely left these people behind. And my grandfather, when he came here, my mom was telling me a story about him and how when he came here, he spoke Italian. And he's out with his buddies out at some Italian American event or something, at some Italian American Heritage Club. And he's talking Italian with all his buddies. And my mom, as his daughter, didn't even know he spoke Italian. He came back and he's like, Dad, I never knew you spoke Italian. He said, it's just because I'm from America now. I'm America first.
Yep.
He was a Democrat and was America first before, you know, even any of, you know, obviously America firsters today at present. And this is a guy that you could not break away from Bill Clinton. You just couldn't. Like, I remember, like, I've been a conservative my entire life, and I remember my parents, like, and I'm sitting there on the couch in his living room talking about how Bill Clinton's a bad guy. He's hooking up with Monica Lewinsky. He's terrible. How could you vote for him? And his response was like, I'll never be Republican. Democrats, hey, we're for the little guy. Republicans are for the big rich people. Democrats are for the little guy. And I'm not changing my vote. That paradigm has completely shifted. Totally. And Trump has brought us, and I don't give a damn what any expert says about this, these expert pundits. He has given the Republican Party and the conservative movement a gift in that we represent the American working class. We now, if we take the opportunity, can represent building trade unions, can represent the American middle class. I mean, like, this is a huge gift, and it wouldn't be possible were it not for Trump. So it blows me away why you have some of these Republicans, even Speaker Mike Johnson now seemingly working against President Trump, trying to undermine a future administration for the guy. Have you talked about the Repo Act, which is being debated on the House floor yesterday and today, which basically disallow Trump? Like if Trump wins another administration, which it looks like he's going to do, it would basically undermine his presidency and completely inhibit his ability to conduct diplomacy on behalf of the United States, absent an act of Congress. That is a deliberate attempt by the deep state to subvert a future Trump presidency, because at some point, Rich, they realize that like their candidate's a 5-alarm fire, the lawfare is failing. Like, at some point, there's going to come a time, and this is just, I'm predicting this, the deep state is just going to say, okay, there's nothing we can do. We can't beat him, so let's just subvert him. And if he tries to conduct diplomacy and
oh, no. Come on back.
oh my God, did you lose me again?
Just for a hot second. Just for a hot second.
So frustrating, Rich. This is so frustrating.
Well, I'll tell you, you're on now. Keep going. And just so people know what I was trying to show here. This is after what Sean was talking about. Look at how close some of those areas got after George Bush basically and Republicans basically betrayed the nation. Look at Western Pennsylvania again. It gets back to being light pink. I mean, McCain got creamed here. And that's because even among those voters, a lot of them went back to being what they were before, which was Democrats. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. Look at how light pink Beaver County is, Sean. I mean, Beaver now, Trump wins 2-1. Look at how light pink it was when Barack Obama went against John McCain. I mean, it's remarkable. I don't know how anybody cannot see this.
Yeah. Beaver County.
Oh, and what you just said, no, I haven't had the time to do it yet. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be obviously a topic. I don't know what Mike Johnson is doing. You know, these people never cease to fail. They never, and all of a sudden the legislature wants to take back their power. They have given up to the executive branch. Not only that, they want power that is actually vested in the executive branch.
I know, like, you want your president to be able to conduct diplomacy on behalf of we people, the people that elect him. But my point is that Republicans still don't get it. And elites like Katie Couric and Bill Maher still don't get it. The reason why Trump is soaring in popularity is because his base isn't going away. Why? Because those people, forgotten men and women, existed before Trump.
Yeah.
Trump just represents them now. But what these trials have done, even with Pudge Alvin Bragg up in New York, which by the way was by and large perceived to be the weakest of the lawfare cases against Trump. And of course, the media has completely shifted their narrative to saying that it's now somehow the strongest. It's a joke of a case. It should have never been brought. But the more they attack this guy, look, if they put Trump behind bars, I mean, look, Frank Luntz, not a Republican. I remember working with, I remember seeing him. I spoke at the Republican conference way back in 2014 when Boehner was speaker and was talking to the conference at large about how to actually talk to voters and engage with voters. And Frank Luntz is as moderate as they come. I mean, one could probably argue that he's not even really a Republican. Even he's saying, if Pudge Alvin Bragg and these Democrats in New York go too far and they put Trump in jail, it's over. Like, it's over. There's nothing they can do. And it's by and large because Black, Latinos, young kids 18 to 35, regardless of race or ethnicity, they see themselves in Trump. And they're creating somebody who's completely unstoppable.
This is the thing too. They have no way of expressing how pissed they are at the system hurting them, and they have no way to fight back. They have no way to say up yours. They have no way to send a middle finger. They have no way of of standing up for themselves. So they look at this regardless of what all those idiots like Bill Maher, honestly, Sean, even though he's come back from his insanity a little bit, he's really ignorant. It stuns me in those like one-on-one sit downs he has with people. When he went with what's his name, Patrick Bet Davis, and then Bet David, and there was someone else too, Oliver Stone, who said the election was stolen. He was like, "Get over it, dude. You know us." You remember that?
Yes,
he's so ignorant. Bill Maher had no idea what they were talking about. He's an idiot.
It is so true. And here's the thing that makes it so egregious to me. they're such dumbasses, except they treat us like we're the stupid ones. Like, they look down their nose, they're smug, if anybody is anti-intellectual, it's them.
Yeah.
They believe every government fake government narrative that has been shoved down their throats since Trump came down that escalator. They believe everything the government has told them, which, like, look,
Everything.
Oliver Stone, Rich, he and I probably have nothing in common politically. Nothing. But I identify with him because at least he's unafraid to tell the truth or speak truth to power. These leftists now used to be rage against the machine, and now it's all about how they can lick boots. They're disgusting losers.
That's, man, so true. And the point about the deep state, man, the Oliver Stones of the world and Bill Maher, maybe he was just doing it because it was cool and he's a cat who likes to run with the crowd or something. The bottom line is they were the ones who questioned the deep state or, feared police power. They're not real liberals anymore. They're fake ass liberals. All right. They run with the herd. They don't know how to think for themselves. Oliver Stone, like you said, I don't think we share anything in common either, except for maybe one thing. He's clearly a critical thinker. He's a critical thinker. How many movies does he have to make about the abuse of power? I mean, for crying out loud, at least he is still honest and true to himself and his own work, his own art. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing that really pisses me off. You use the term Rage Against the Machine. So much for that damn band. What a bunch of losers. No, I'm serious. Like, this is unbelievable. You are the machine now. Entertainment, artists, for almost all of human civilization. Michelangelo, I mean, for crying out loud, never wanted to be a patron of the Catholic Church. Aristotle ran away from Philip, who didn't want to teach Alexander, his son, who became Alexander the Great. He would kidnap Aristotle, dude. That was the only way he could get him to teach his damn son and his friends. They wanted nothing to do with these people who are now, I mean, listen, they're the same kind of people that we just refer to them now as the deep state. It's the same kind of people. They never wanted ever to have their power back. And it was those artists, those people in society who, who were canaries in the coal mine over it. Now, because it's what? Because it's Trump? It's not even like they're trying to take back power that belonged to Congress, like the power to wage war or something, to declare war. That's it, the power of the purse, right? They're not even taking back power that they have long abdicated to an executive branch that's out of control. No, they want power that actually belongs to the executive branch, which they don't even have a way to wield.
It's such a good point. And it makes me think of this whole FISA 702 stuff, the reauthorization. Yeah. And by the way, like, I think every member of the PA GOP congressional delegation, Republicans, everybody but two, I think Dan Muser and Scott Perry, voted for a FISA reauthorization. And these people I consider to be my friends, but I could not be more disappointed in them. Shame on them all, because you can't, you and I have talked about this many, many times, both on my show and on your show. I look back on the Patriot Act, all cards on the table. I was for it. This was after 9/11. I joined the military, wanted to get in the fight. Hey, it's called the Patriot Act. How bad could it be?
How bad could it be?
I was an idiot.
They're trying to protect us.
Yep. I was an idiot. I was 20 something. I didn't get it. I didn't listen to the Ron Pauls of the world who warned about it, that once you give up your freedom, it's very difficult to give it back. And here we get it back. And here we are 20 plus years later, still trying to claw it back. Yeah. When the vast majority of Republicans are now voting on warrantless spying on American citizens, I don't know how you can be the party that's pro-freedom and also pro-warrantless spying on American citizens. And oh, by the way, here's the real kicker. FISA courts are completely broken. They're basically a rubber stamp.
Rubber stamps, bro.
So you're telling me that you don't even want to have to get the rubber stamp? How bad could what you be doing? How really, you know what I mean? Like it's a rubber stamp, dude. They're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like, what's the problem? But you don't even want that? Hey, give me a break. Give me a break, man.
Yeah, like I said on your show last week, all of these agencies, you look at somebody like the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Ron Paul did an investigation on this. Inspector General Michael Horowitz has looked into this, the Woods procedures, the constant violation of the Woods procedures. They are unworthy to wield such power. They're not worthy of it. And I don't need them to protect me. I will protect myself and my own family. It's that simple. Why? Because I'm less afraid of any private entity that doesn't have unlimited resources and a printing press at their disposal and police state power. I'm less afraid of those entities than I am of the federal government. And you would be a fool not to be yourself out there who are listening. There is no comparison. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, by the way, had to be usurped by the Treasury Division during the mob era for Al Capone, the Untouchables, because they didn't call them Untouchables because Capone couldn't kill them. They called them the Untouchables because the FBI was corrupt and Elliot Ness was not.
Yes.
I mean, this has been going on a while. Give me back the John Dillingers. I'll handle them myself.
I have been saying this
Period.
for months, that for the next Trump administration, there needs to be some sort of untouchable type unit that does nothing but reform the deep state. I mean, Trump should leverage the full power of the executive branch and fire the top 20 people at every institution. That needs to happen. But there needs to be some sort of outside group that does nothing but track down these communists. And that's really what they are. They're communist revolutionaries that nestled their way into the system. We need to find out who they are, and we need to purge them from government. And no, I don't mean like, liberals that are watching, or heads are probably going to explode. I don't mean like violently purge them. I'm just saying that if you don't believe in the Constitution and you're out there chanting death to America and blocking traffic, shouldn't be working for the U.S. government.
Yeah. So tell me what's going on. Roman just walked. What's going on today, Sean? What's the game plan? Because I know I catch you.
I don't know, man. I mean, like, I spent all morning trying to harden my system against all these cyber attacks, and because it's just happening over and over and over again. I mean, you said like try to see if they have any burst attacks. There were 800 of them, and so, I'm planning the show.
That's what it just sounded like it to me.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to harden my system and make sure the studio is good to go. Knock on wood, we're making progress. But we're going to talk about these Trump trials. We're going to talk about Republicans just capitulating. And a perfect example of Republican capitulation, Rich, is a microcosm of all of our problems is that NPR still has funding. After everything that we knew years ago that they shouldn't, but even now 100% of their employees are all liberals. This new NPR CEO is a woke nightmare. I mean, if they can't defund NPR, how do you think they're going to be able to like defund or cut funding for Ukraine?
I mean, from a battle perspective, Sean, like, and to give it an analogy, like a war analogy, when they do stuff like this, it's like resupplying your enemy, reinforcing your enemy. It's like we took out the supply chain. We have a chance to, not only do we not take out the bridge to cut their supply line, we build them a more sturdy one. It's just so stupid. And by the way, fight every new troop as it comes across the bridge. We're just so stupid.
Yeah. We give our political enemies moral victories. And if you're a battlefield commander, one of the number one things, just speaking from personal experience, one of the number one things that I told my soldiers out there in the field is, I don't give a damn how bad it gets. We are not retreating because we're not breaking contact, because we will never give the enemy a moral victory.
Yeah.
If we take terrain, we hold it. Period.
That's when they come out more. Because you're giving them something to believe in. You're giving them something to aspire to, and at the same time, demoralizing your own. And in this case, providing that analogy, it's something as simple as turnout. Well, we're winning. We're coming out. By the way, the polls will change. You give them moral victories, they want to respond more to polls. Then you get Republicans don't. They'll hang up. The polls will start to turn, even though it may not be real, but that's a response bias. That's very typical. And I always use the example of Mitt Romney in 2012. He wasn't ever ahead of Barack Obama. Barack Obama had a moral defeat during the first debate. Mitt Romney looked like he whipped him. Republicans were just willing to talk on the phone with Pew Research that month, and Gallup, and the Democrats were down because their guy didn't do well. But that all changed very, very, very quickly when he lost the second debate because he's a coward. Because
Do you know why? Do you know why?
He's a retreater, by the way.
You got it.
He's a
Listen,
retreater.
If you have not, you and Savage Laura and all your Savage children and Savage Winston, if you have not,
Love
if you have,
dog. It's amazing.
You've got to go. If you haven't already, you've got to watch the documentary Mitt on Netflix because it shows you why he lost the second debate. And Melanie and I were watching Mitt, and like there was a point on his campaign where he's surrounded by all of his kids, his family members, which are they're basically liberals, but
yes.
even worse, just milquetoast Republicans, telling him directly, you can't debate a president like that ever again.
Yep.
He's a president. And it's like, wait, so you consciously decided to be a mangina? Like you consciously, I mean, come on, you consciously decided. Wait, was Roman didn't just hear me say that? I don't need him.
No. He's out of and he wouldn't have he's 4. He wouldn't. I don't think he even knows that word yet. He knows some other words he probably shouldn't. That's my fault. But
well, listen, even if he doesn't know what it means, you don't need him saying it to the cable guy that comes to the door, like mangina. Like you don't need,
Laura's laughing in the other room. I can hear her, because he does. I mean, he's at the parrot stage. I mean, we took Winston to the vet, how to get him his what's that? Laura knows, keep up with the regimen. He's got one more to get. And in any event, I mean, I'm trying to teach him, where we're going, what we're doing. So we're going to a vet. We're going to a doggy doctor. They're called veterinarians, or you could just say vet. I mean, the first thing he did when the doctor walked in was, "Hello, veterinarian." I mean, immediately. He did say something bad the other day. It's totally on me. And then I throw it on Laura. So when he says it, I'm like, Laura, despicable. Where did he hear that? Despicable. Of course, he got it from me.
Wait, you throw it on Laura?
Oh, absolutely. I'm like, that's despicable that you would teach him that.
I'm just gonna tell you, like, just you saying that and me putting myself in your shoes and imagining myself doing that to Commander Melanie scares the bejesus out of me. Like, if I even come,
gotta do it a certain way.
Like, if this woman, she would not be having any of that. Like, so
I only halfway get away with it.
Somehow imagine that Savage Laura is not having any of that either.
No, she doesn't. I make it look like it's like halfway a joke, to try to ease it. But then the kids always break the ice anyway because they'll just look like, "Dad, are you serious?" Like that definitely came from
make it look like a joke. Do you do the thing that like? So there's a thing that like when and boys tend to do this more than girls. But like when doling out tasks to the kids, or Commander Melanie is up there, or wife, mom, or doling out tasks to the family, clean up after dinner, and you purposefully load the dishwasher incorrectly because you know that the wife is going to come in and say, no, you loaded this all wrong, and then never ask you to do it again. Do you do that?
I don't, but my son used to try to do that, and my daughter does it. Things like that to get my wife to tell my son to do it because and she isn't wise to it yet. I'm like, Laura, she's playing you, like she doesn't want to do it. And of course, it's just simple things like God forbid the liberals aren't going to love this one, but we do have certain things in this house, like men take out the garbage, right? Men
of course, absolutely.
I'm not making my wife touch the disgusting garbage. I'm not making my daughter touch the disgusting garbage. That's my son and I's job. But there are things, that it doesn't work that way. Sometimes the reverse, so like my son definitely does the dishes more.
You're right.
It never does. It's a double standard in the modern era anyway. And then it is. And my son, maybe it's admittedly a little bit of a bias, but I just feel like my son does more. I really do. Now, he doesn't have all the extracurricular stuff that she has. He does. He's in ROTC, he's in band. But she, because we've talked about this, and my local supporters know as well. My daughter's a competitive dancer. It's freaking rigorous. She's exhausted, so it's like almost fair, but it's still understandable if he complains about it, you know, because it's like you have just a little bit more extra time in your hands.
I'm not even gonna lie to you, Rich. My boys don't even do close as much as the girls. And you know what?
Really? Oh,
Yes, I mean, oh
man.
my gosh, I cannot tell you how many times I got to tell my boys to pick up their clothes off the bathroom floor,
Are
make
they
their bed.
older? Are they older?
Well, Ethan is 15 and Evan is 11,
Yeah,
and the way it
that's
works with
that
my
age.
oldest is like you give him 3 tasks to do. Chances are he'll get the first one done. The next one's at about 50%. You'd be lucky if you get the third one done. But the girls, it's like if you give them, first of all, you don't even have to give them tasks. They just do it without being asked. Like their room needs to be clean, they do it. Their laundry, they need to
My
get laundry,
daughter keeps
do
her
it.
room immaculate,
Yes.
including more than mine. It is, and I can't stand mess. I don't like it. My dad did something to me, and then I went in the
I
military, loved it, and because they don't deal with, and I'm like, yeah, clean your shit up, you know, keep your shit squared away.
I
But you got it was hard for me to come out of the military and remember my family was not in the military, you know, so like Laura. You know, Laura, this,
I mean,
you
I was
know,
in the military and Melanie's clearly the commander around here. Like I don't even care. Like, you know, I will protect the household. I will use my paramilitary tactical prowess to protect the household. I'll do all the outside work. I'll help on the inside work. I got no issues whatsoever taking all commands from the tower. But
I'll
but
tell you that she shut that down right away. When we first moved, here she comes. When
yeah,
we first moved in together, I'll tell them, and if I don't tell them accurately, you can jump in and make it and make an amendment. All right. Listen,
here
not
she
only
comes.
that,
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't fold them right because you know the military teaches you a certain way of doing your laundry and how you fold your clothes and how you store your clothes. You know, she wasn't doing it right even when she would do them, but that wasn't even it. I remember when we first moved in together and we only had one car and we're going down the Garden State Parkway and the Turnpike every day, 45 minutes. She's going to work at that time with a lawyer, who, by the way, the lawyer who then would later merge with Jose Baez and represent Casey Anthony. I kid you not. She's going back and forth. Or no, that was another lawyer. Sorry, that's Kathy. Anyway, going back and forth. She's working at a lawyer's office. I'm working at this time, still doing a Wall Street gig. And it was just a pain in the butt. And I'm like drill sergeanting her when we first move in together, like in the shower, like 2 minutes for a shower, minute to get yourself a call. And she's doing it at first. And then finally, she's just not even finally. I mean, it may have lasted a minute and a half, you know? And she was like, wait a minute. What the hell am I doing? She's like, I'm not in the damn army, drill sergeant. Calm your britches. I'll be ready when I'm ready. And that was it. I never tried anything ever again. You know, I was. Oh God, she did. I ran her out of the shower. It was barely in time to get hot water. The next day, I'm in the shower getting ready for work, and we ate pasta a lot back then. I used to cook back then, and we ate pasta a lot. We had this big red pan where I would make chicken cacciatore and we would save it. You know, loved it. She fills this pot, Sean, no, I kid you not, it was massive, with ice water. And I'm in the shower. La da 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 da. She dumps this thing of ice water. It was like like a coach. Like it looked like the Gatorade thing. It was huge. It was so cold. She got me back. I was like, all right, you're getting hot showers forever, and I'll never do that to you again. She got me so good. Yeah, so that didn't last long at all. But I wasn't doing it because I meant to do it, Sean. I was fresh out of the military.
Yeah.
And that's how I got ready. That's how I did things, you know? It was just I couldn't turn it off at first, which I'm sure you understand. You know, I just
Yeah,
couldn't turn it off.
yeah, and you there's a lot of things that just will never. I mean, a lot of the things that they teach you in the military just they become woven into the fabric of your DNA almost. I mean, they almost like
Yeah.
rewire your brain. And yeah, it just is what it is. For me, I mean, I'm not a messy person at all, and I think Melanie would agree with me. But I'm more. What upsets me more is when the kids don't listen. Like when they don't listen.
Oh
And
my God, you hear this,
I know that
Laura?
they hear me. I know that they hear me. I make them acknowledge me, and then they completely blow me off.
Yep.
They blow Melanie off, and it's like one of those things. It's just like, okay, so now you're just blatantly disrespecting me. Like, because you're saying that
Yup.
what you want to do is more important than what I just told you, right? That's what gets me going. And like, I look back on my military days. If I didn't listen to a commander, I'd get destroyed. I'd get fired. If when I was a new recruit, didn't listen to a drill sergeant, I'd get smoked. I mean, like,
my
just
God.
not a thing, you know.
It
But
was not an option, Sean. And
it's
then
not an option.
and then even when you were with me, with my father, I didn't listen to my biological mother worth a damn. I had no respect for her. But my father, she didn't earn it. She didn't deserve any. But my mom, who my dad remarried, I listened to religiously. I mean, first of all, she was a wonderful woman and did so much for me. I would never dream of disrespecting her like that. You get to be an older kid, an older boy, especially one like me who wants to go out and be a little dangerous and have fun. You screw up sometimes, but like, I just don't remember ever doing what some kids do these days. Most kids do these days with blatantly ignoring what your parents told you to do. And we just sat our kids down yesterday, 2 days ago. And you know what's been going on in our personal lives. Now is not the time to misbehave, or that was not the time. Like, do not stress your mother out further than it needs to be.
Read the room. Exactly.
Read. I used those exact words to my son. I said, Nico, read the damn room. Situation awareness, brother. Okay. Now is not the time to add further stress to your mother. And this is the time to be for consolation and respect. But yeah, they're good. Otherwise they're good kids. We have really good kids, but just like all other kids, they do that. So, and you got to kind of rein them back in. I feel like it's a cycle where you get them where you want them. And then if you're not like mindful, they start to like do stupid stuff again, and you got to pull them back in. Right. Kind of, I mean, that's just children, I think. Yeah. Roman is a monster. And I don't know what he's going to be like when he gets to be Nico's age. Because
I will say this, like, Commander Melanie, when I say that, it's like in jest. There's a give and take in our relationship. And like, no relationship is truly 50-50. Every relationship has to be 60-40 at any given moment, right? And it oscillates back and forth. It's never set if you're in something that's healthy. But I will say this.
Totally agree.
I do think, and I don't know how Laura will feel about this, but I think that Melanie will agree with me that the whole happy wife, happy life thing has led over the course of generations to one generation of woman tyrant after the next that does not, because it really listen, like, that is a pathway to unhappiness in life and in marriage. And like, it really should be happy spouse, happy house, because
that's what Laura, she just said that as you were saying it, Sean.
Yeah.
Because there are days when I'm a prick and she's got to give a little, what I mean?
Absolutely right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And then there are days, and I acknowledge it. Like, sometimes I can just be an ass. I'm difficult to live with, I know I am, and they're no easier. And that's the way family is. I mean, that's the way marriage is. I have a lot of friends and certainly family, and they ended in divorce. And I listen to somebody like complain about something. Oh, she drives me nuts. She does this. She drives me nuts. He drives me nuts. He does that. It's like, what the hell did you think marriage was?
Yeah.
What did you think was going to happen here? You're not trying. You're not keeping your oath to God. End of story.
Love is important, and that's and all that stuff is important. Like, I don't think you should ever stop dating, right? But I also think it's more about commitment to one another than almost anything else, and just being and I say this as somebody who failed obviously in my first marriage, and that was not in the cards for me. Sometimes God throws you a curveball. It's never
I'm
something
talking about stupid shit. What
I mean, like, of course. I'm just saying that, like, sometimes life throws you a curveball, and sometimes life is imperfect, and you just got to roll with the punches and do the best that you can. But as I get older, you talk about like taking the conversation back to raising kids, there's not a manual for this. And, there's like a what to expect when expecting that men can read to kind of get smart on that. But there's no manual for kids, and no one teaches, which is kind of crazy, that you're not really taught about children in high school or in college. Even when you're taking a childhood development class, which I did, I have a master's degree in clinical psychology. They don't ever actually teach you about Yeah, I was in a clinical psychology PhD program for neuroscience and combat trauma, and
How the hell did I not know that after all this?
Because most of my career, I mean, when I say I was an outsider, I mean it. Like I like running for office was kind of like always on the outskirts for me.
Yeah.
But I wrote my first book when I was in grad school. That was Outlaw Platoon, and that first book, it took off, and now it's published in 10 countries. I mean,
I
it was
remember that book. I actually remember it. That may be the first time I ever heard your name. Actually, was that book?
Yeah, that was the first. I mean, I was just a nothing burger captain, and I come out of the military, and Outlaw Platoon somehow just took off, and that gave me a little bit of a public platform. But I left school to pursue writing after that, so I left with my master's degree. But even with all these childhood development courses that I took, they never teach you how to be a parent, and so I think the hallmark of a good parent is not necessarily, I mean, you want to try to make every decision in the moment correct, but I don't think that we're called to do that. I think that, sometimes you're going to be like laying in bed, maybe, thinking in your own head or talking to your spouse, like, I think I want a mulligan on that one, or did I handle this the right way? But I think if you're asking yourself those questions about your kids, about being a spouse, you're on the right path. How the hell are we talking about this right now? Like,
I don't know, but it's good stuff, and we'll leave people with this because I know it's 2:25 and we'll end it. But I will say this, and I'm sure you're probably going to agree. I mean, I don't know how you couldn't getting this far as you did, but guys, like Laura and I have this rule, and we have this saying too that really leads up to this rule, like. If you're not fighting sometimes, it's probably means you're not in a healthy marriage because you care enough about each other to mix it up about things, in a certain way. I'm not talking about killing each other fights. I'm talking about there should be disagreements and you should hear each other on those. But no matter what, we don't wake up and take it with us. The next day is the next day. And that's a rule we have. And you start fresh that next day. And I'm not saying you just park stuff and leave stuff that's unresolved. That's not the same thing. It means you do not wake up with a grudge. You wake up with a fresh new perspective and you try to hammer out something you couldn't hammer out before. But we just don't hold those grudges with each other. We just don't. And, I think there's like a realization too with Laura. I don't know how it would be with anybody else, but I've known Laura more, for more of my life than I haven't. And I don't know how else to put that, but we have. So, it may be, who knows? It may be a little codependent. I don't know, but in a good way, in a good way.
And
we're good friends.
Yeah, that's right.
Best friends. I mean,
yeah. I mean, Melanie's my best friend too. And
Yeah.
I think, we talk about politics all the time, but it can't just be lip service where politicians talk about many of the issues that we have in this country can be solved around the kitchen table, around strong families. I mean, everything that we're talking about is in line with the mission to save this country and get it back on the right track, because the reality is
family unit.
Yes, you grow up, we don't talk about politics, we don't talk about religion, but strangely, all of our problems that we have in today's day and age are about politics and a lot about religion. So maybe we should have talked about that stuff all along.
I think honestly, I was just, Laura, you took the words right out of my mouth. That is not how we were in the beginning of this country. Our forefathers went to taverns and interrupted. You know what I mean? Now you go to a beer, you go to get a beer at a bar, and people are like, dude, I just want to catch a buzz. I don't want to be bothered with this, even though a lot of people do still talk about it. But
yeah,
the taverns were the houses of debate in our founders' age. They did not shy away from these conversations. And I think, honestly, the 60s generation implemented a lot of really bad ideas. I really believe that. And they kind of just went along to get along, not under the impression that they may be doing damage. The family unit is very important, and speaking of books, I tried to explain this. This is, you can calculate this. This is not really debatable. This is math. You have stronger base units in society that lead to stronger communities. Stronger communities lead to stronger townships, counties, whatever it is you have. The stronger they are in a state, the stronger your state is. The stronger your state is, the stronger your nation is. I mean, you can actually put this down on paper. And they just thought they could take a wrecking ball to like foundational ideas, the building blocks of our ideology, of our identity, and the building blocks of society, and then nothing was going to come of it or something, Sean. You know, I mean, it is very irresponsible and very reckless. And I blame them for a lot of this. I really, including my own parents' generation. My dad was not a flower child, but my mother, biological mother, was absolutely to blame and a lifelong Democrat. To this day, never changed like we talked about before, you know, with evolving. I would imagine she would have hated Trump's guts. You know what I mean? But, you know, very much a liberal. Not that was wrong to say a Democrat. A leftist who wants, you know, authority. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I will never understand that, man. I will
Me
never
either.
understand that. But
Me either. But what are you gonna do today? You're gonna rock it on 5 o'clock and see what happens. You've been going strong here.
I'm gonna try. I've had internet outages on the last couple of shows, but again, it's just somebody trying to like mess with me and stop the show. But yes, I'm gonna give it a go. I'm not gonna let these losers win. That's for sure. So
No way.
I'm just gonna keep plugging away. And as always, you have an open invite, whether it's tonight, tomorrow, whenever, to come on the show and give us a breakdown of everything inside the numbers, as you do graciously every week. But
Yeah, I'm down. You know me, I'm down. Give me a buzz after. Let me just check with. Speaking of Commander Melanie, let me check. I gotta come up with a name for her. But I don't know if there's any makeup thing today. I mean, what does tonight look like? I mean, you're here. Do you have your thing in front of you? Well, I don't know if it's like 10 paces away. You know, 10 paces. No, yeah, I mean, normally Wednesdays are pretty good. There was some moving around of stuff considering what happened, and I don't know if the kids have stuff, but either today or tomorrow, I'd be happy to come on. I'll be happy to come on today. If there's nothing today, I'll do it today.
That would be incredible, because I've been focused on hardening this system all day. So I've got a couple hours to plan the show, and when you're on, we just go, you know?
Yeah. Let's do it then. Let's just do it. Let's do it. We'll figure it out.
Let me know, man. And thank you for being patient, and thank you to your audience for being patient with my system here. And I'm sorry about
peeps,
that,
man. They're good peeps. They really are. They get it. And you know, I hope they get bored and just kind of move on, which they did with me. They just got bored. There are a couple things off air, though. I'll talk to you about it. There are a couple of things we did, and it definitely helped.
Okay.
Then they went after Market Site. I kid you not. And they tried to shut down my Market Site account. These are losers. They have nothing else to do. It was crazy because it's a big company in this industry. And for the longest time, if you would type in Market Site, you saw our account, like our sub account to Market Site. Because why? Google, DuckDuckGo, all these traffic engines, the search engines, go by traffic. And there was so many brute force attacks to my personal thing. You were seeing all my crosstabs in their site tree. It's a huge company. That's how hard they hit me. I mean, they took it down for days. And just every time we released a poll, wham. And I mean, it looked ridiculous because the poll results are not loading.
That's how it is for me, Rich. It's like it's all like a humiliate. I mean, I'm not humiliated. It just happens. Stuff like this happens, and then to get confirmation that it's some sort of cyber attack, some burst attack on my router. At least I know what it is. But yeah, man, it's a pain. We'll fight through it, though. I mean, gosh, knock on wood, things going okay so far. So. If you can make it on and Laura's cool with that, like that would be great to have you. I love having you every Wednesday anyway. People are kind of gotten used to it.
That's what I was thinking. People are kind of used to it, and people don't like a break of routine, and I'm good with that. And plus, like I told you this, yes, it was last night or this morning, whatever. Even when something happens in my life that I need to take some time away, and I'm burning out, but even I don't care. I feel like a lazy bum. I feel like guilty. I know I have a high work ethic. I got it from my father. And even when something like an emergency health issue happens in my family, I feel like guilty that I am not working and I can't get rid of it. So it'll help me. Honestly, I mean, I'll feel if I come on the show tonight, I'll feel like I'm making up for not being around for a couple of days. It's crazy. It's just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd rather be that than a lazy bum. I'd rather be that. Oh, he's glitching again. I'd rather, but folks, oh, there you are. I'd rather be that than a lazy bum, Sean. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, open invite. So keep your fingers crossed for no tech issues, but we're going to go. So, cause that's what we do.
Cool. All right, brother. I'll see you soon. Thanks for joining. As always, tell people 5 p.m. tonight. Tell
5
people
p.m. tonight. Yeah. Please come over to my page on Rumble, Battleground Live on Rumble. We go live from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. every night here on Rumble. And then we're also available on iHeartRadio now. Cool. Which is cool.
Very cool.
The audio version of the show.
All right, brother. I'll see you then.
See you, man. Thanks, Rich. Take care, brother.
Take care. Sean Parnell, everybody. All right. See you at 5 p.m., which is about 2.5 hours from now. And I'll go run, grab my girls, bring them back, do what I got to do, and see you on Battleground. Sound good? Give you a little bit of time today. Sean was glitching. I really wanted to talk about, I know we went off on a tangent about other things, but you know what? It's important. But I really wanted you guys to hear the story. Very similar to me, close to the tri-state area. He's just a little bit more west, and a perfect example of what I'm talking about here with ancestral voting patterns. Those were Democrats, like my grandfather and great-grandfather were part of the New York Democratic Italian machine. You know, that has changed, but only because of the reasons we discussed. And ethnicity is almost more important than simple race. Race is too simple. It's too simple. And if you dumb it down like that, then the problem you have, when you see all these dumb hot takes on Twitter about how Republicans should abandon this vote, abandon that vote, and then just go after and max out the white vote. You can't do that. There aren't enough of them. This is who you are appealing to now. That is the greater share of the white vote that you're going to get. You're not getting that other share back anytime soon. The only way to do it is to continue, because many of the ethnicities that we've been talking about, nothing lasts forever. You would never have thought that Sean's family would ever vote Republican or vote for a Trump or any. Never. So when people say, well, Hispanics are never going to vote Republican, never say never, because nothing lasts forever in politics. Period. Full stop. Nothing lasts forever. All right. With that, I'm going to sign on off of here. Don't forget, if you like the videos, like them, share them far and wide. The best place, of course, to follow us is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. Join the book club, because a lot of this we went through in the book club when we read Kevin Phillips' The Emerging Republican Majority. We're going to be doing The Emerging Populist Majority after a primer on the Emerging Democratic Majority. Just so much you're missing out on. Certainly helps with the flow of the show. All right. Best place again, peoplespundit.locals.com. Thanks to the Wellness Company for the sponsor today. The link's in the description. Do not let your family go without those. We did not. All right. And we paid for ours, just like you would. So don't get yourself flat-footed. All right. All right. I'm out. I will see you tonight. Well, tonight. I will see you in an hour and 23 minutes. Thanks for watching, folks. Oh, and deuces. Thank you, Laura.